Hey guys, Global 5 here today. We're doing another set review. It's slightly different than a set review, I should say. We did the slime set review a couple months back, and we went to the community asking for some feedback and ideas. And the two big things that we got from people were they wanted a shorter video and they wanted more to like the good cards. Ignore all the commons and uncommons that just won't get played. So I'm here with Victor today. What's going on, man?
Not much. Getting ready to look at some of the most exciting cards from the new Sword Art set.
Yeah, and so what we've done is we've taken what is our take of the most impactful cards for different levels from the new Sword Art 10th anniversary set. This was a set I opened when I was in Japan. I got into it just because I like the art. The light novel art's really cool, and it's pretty standalone from the other SAO stuff. So when we're talking about decks, we're probably just going to be centered within the SAO 10th anniversary deck, as it really doesn't gel with the other SAO sets that are out.
Yeah, none
Uh,
of the cards that care about traits care about anything but the anniversary trait. So not a lot of standalone or not a lot of integration with the older sets here. Even like the Hugos and things with the Fluctlight trait, uh, which we'll get to. I think at least one of them. They're focused more around anniversary than anything else. So we'll just hop in with the first card we like to look at, which is the Azuna. She's a level 0, basically a 35 runner. When you play her, you look at the top of your deck. If it's an anniversary character, you get a marker. The marker gives her 2k power, and she's a free runner. She can move to any empty slot.
it only goes to the front row center slot.
Goes to the front row center slot.
Yeah, so it acts like your CG runner. Instead of being a stock requirement, it has a marker requirement. Um, it's a pretty good, solid uh, first turn play, in my opinion. I'm actually not playing it because there's so many good level zeros in this set. But this is a very good plussing zero.
She gives you the marker, which, if you can refresh with it, is one less card in your waiting room when you refresh. Uh, for similar timings like that, and it's a pretty strong level 0.
Yeah, the next one is Kirito and Asuna, Alicization Exploding. This is a 003K. It cannot side attack. However, it is also a clean cut for anniversary trait characters. 3K is, as we have noted in other videos, becoming what is should be an oversized consideration. So even though this doesn't get a power pump, um, the ability to clean cut with a 3K, and of course you do have back rows and other assists that can help out. So this is definitely a really powerful play.
Yeah, just to make it a little more inclusive to maybe newer players that are watching, a clean cut is the effect when it reverses its battle opponent, you choose one of your other characters, rest it, and move it to an empty slot in the back row. So something like this would let you attack with a back row utility character like a Brainstorm or a Global first, and then attack with this one second, reverse battle opponent, and move it to the back row. This one's a real spicy card. Heathcliff, Knights of the Blood Oath Guild Leader. Recollection, if this is in memory, players can't use Encore. This includes pay 3 Encore as provided by the rules for every character. And of course, he's got a way to send himself to memory. Pay 1, send him to memory. Look at top 4, grab an anniversary character, reveal it, put it in your hand, put the rest in the waiting room. So he's got it all. He's got the memory, he's got the anti-Encore, and card selection, a mill 4.
It's a great card. What do you think about the anti encore? Do you think it like breaks like a fundamentals of the game because it's just continuous at all times and you can do it starting at 0?
I think it'll punish certain decks. Fate comes to mind with its global clock encore, but for the most part, it'll also punish you. Like, this is a symmetrical effect, so if you're in a situation where you're low on cards and you think encore would be a great way to maintain hand size, you're out of luck if you're playing this guy. But for the most part, it seems very anti-fate right now.
I think that'll become more prevalent in English, or should I say, when we do get this set, as Fate got hit with the last ban list, and their encore card is on there. But yeah, I think that standby decks, if you can get over them, that this does hurt them a little bit, since then they now have to use resources that they would rather not use to then field those. I don't think it's super game breaking. A lot of people, when this was spoiled, kind of lost their minds. But I like it. Like, this card's like really cool. I love look at top fours. I love memory compression. And then it just has this other little like neat little trick that sometimes gets you things, sometimes does hurt you. A lot of the anniversary decks, of which I think there's like a pretty solid like 6 different builds, do create a bunch of stock, and being able to use that stock to encore characters is sometimes worthwhile. So this does hurt that plan a little bit, but overall, this is a pretty unique and interesting card. And I'll be interested to see if they do print some more of it in the future.
Yeah, it's really good to have a wide selection of safety valves on the metagame at any given time. So maybe Fate in Japan got nerfed quite a bit with its 5 choose 1, which is sort of really a 4 choose 1. But maybe another new set comes out where it focuses heavily on Encore. You'll at least be able to go back to a card like this and say, hey, I remember this, and bring it in when that set comes out. Sort of like anti-burn ones that exist right now. If a set ever starts doing really, really well that has a lot of burn ones, like let's say when Albuta was doing really well, it brought Kimono Friends back into the meta because they were countering that bodyguard.
Yeah, for sure. Next one we have is Yuki to the Next World. At the beginning of your climax phase, you choose one of your anniversary characters, give it 500 power. This is sort of like a reverse Chino Brainstorm. It's the Remy Brainstorm that was the first with this profile, right?
I think Remy has it offensively too, right?
Yeah, Remy has it. I think she was the first one. This is a pay one rest self salvage brainstorm. It's the only brainstorm in the set that's not a spammable one. Good note. Good times. Only pulled one of these out of my boxes, so get sad. But yeah, this is your only brainstorm, so here it is.
Yeah, if you were looking to build this set, this is something you should be picking up for sure.
The decks that we were testing though, you can probably get away with like 3 of the brainstorm, is what we were finding as well though.
Yeah, one of the next cards we're going to look at, not this one right here on the screen right now, but upcoming, we'll see a reason to get away with running a less than 4 copies of the Brainstorm if you want. This one here, though, we've got a 500 power level 0 clock bomb with on play. Look at the top 2 cards of your library and rearrange them. So this is really good for setting up climax triggers if you want to splash standbys from the previous set. If you're really big on getting extra stock or extra cards from your choice climax, stuff like that. And then the level 0 clock bomb at 500 power is really good at denying your opponents when this character is reversed in battle effects, especially ones that send characters to memory. Kaban comes to mind as a good target for front attacking with this card.
Yeah, this card is really great. It puts a lot of utility work in. I've tested 3 variants of the deck so far, and having this in at least 2 of them, the 8 choice and the choice pants have been pretty good. Just helping me figure out attack orders for those decks. And then, there's that added 500 power, kick Kaban right to the clock, which is really nice. This card, possibly the best card in the set, I would say. It's Yuna, Ordinal Scale. Up to once per turn, when you use an act or a startup ability, you reveal the top card of your library. If it's an anniversary character, add it to hand, then discard. It also has a startup that's restless, and choose one of your characters, give it 500 power for the turn.
Yeah, the amount of utility you get from this card is pretty absurd. Every brainstorm is a brainstorm for 5. Every counter is a Leafa counter. It does a lot of stuff. Hand
You can
filtering
leaf a
as well, discard outlet. It's basically everything you could ever want in a card.
you could double leaf a counter at 1 because there is a leaf a counter at 1, and then do this. It's like the play patterns of this card and just being able to do what you do with it is just mind blowing. How many times in like a game did I top check, Victor? Like
It's guaranteed to happen at least once on your turn because you have the ability to rest it and give a character 500 power to get the check anytime you want on your main phase. And then, as long as you have a backup in hand, you can just fire it off and then get the extra card that way. Dig one deeper for a cancel like a Leaf a counter would.
the backup play is really good, and the types of backups that they have in this set are pretty useful for the different decks that exist. But this card, I think, is probably the MVP of the set, just because of how much utility and differences that it can provide in order to just get you through different deck states and help confirm like brainstorms and other effects as well.
We've got here next Kirito, which is a 500 global to all anniversary. And whenever a character triggers a pants, you discard a card and you choose a character in your waiting room and return it to hand. There's definitely a deck list you can build that uses 8 pants triggers, and this would be a great addition to it. Gets you that hand filtering early.
Yep. The 8 pants deck, I haven't tested that one yet. It's on my list to give it a whirl. But this card's definitely going to go into it, as I think it definitely adds some added utility. So that way you can just trigger, add climax, then discard it, and salvage something that you need for the turn that's going to come. So it's some pretty unique utility. I don't think we've gotten a card like this.
It reminds me a lot of the when you trigger a gold bar type effects that grab a card from your clock, except this grabs a card from your waiting room. It has a similar effect where you can use your pants to get another climax and discard that climax as the cost for the effect. So if you're flooded on climaxes when you trigger one, it's not nearly as bad. You can get it in your waiting room right away.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's also like a really cool play pattern where you could trigger it, grab your like level 1 climax combo, and then discard like a level 3 from your hand and grab like a level 1 character. That way, setting up like either a second turn to combo off, or setting up for your level 1 just to begin with. So definitely look forward to the 8 pants build. It wasn't something originally I thought was going to be really good, but cards like these I think are what's going to help that be just really consistent and provide a little oomph to just keep your hand up.
Yeah, so this basically makes it so that every time you trigger a pants, you can basically treat it as if you triggered a door as well. So it's a really strong effect, and it's not to be overlooked. Maybe even if you're only running 4 pants.
Yeah, definitely. I think 4 pants you probably play like 1 or 2 copies, and then if you get it, great. If you don't, it's fine. Next card we have here, it's a Kirito. It is a 3K when it comes into play from your hand, which is not too bad at beater size. It also is an on-death Azusa, so that way when it goes to the waiting room, you can discard a card from your hand, look up to the top 4 cards of your deck, choose an anniversary character, reveal it, and add it to your hand. Put the rest into your waiting room. Pretty powerful effect. The on-death Azusas are what they've been printing a lot more of. We have seen a couple of on-play Rizé type effects and Azusas, but they're very few and far between now. Mostly they've gone to this either reverse or death timing. So it does weaken the effect a little bit, but it's still pretty good.
Yeah, I'm a fan of the card. Any Azusa is a good Azusa, and the fact that he comes into play as a 3K means he can pressure mill runners really well, attacks any utility. So he puts good pressure on the turn you play him, and then it doesn't matter that he's defending as a 15. You kind of want him to die after he's done that, so the second effect that gives him the power is definitely a huge buff to the overall archetype of the card versus being just a 2k flat on both turns.
Agreed.
The next Kirito we've chosen is a pay 1, put the top card of your library in clock. When this is placed from hand to stage, pay cost. If so, look at the top 2 cards of your library, grab 2 anniversary characters among them, show them to your opponent, put them in your hand, and put the rest in the waiting room. So he top checks for the top 2. If they're both characters, you get to draw 2 cards. He's pay 1 clock yourself for a chance to get a pot of greed.
For not having a Ricky, I don't think SAO has a Ricky at all, right?
I could be wrong, but I don't think so, no.
So, like, I'm not super big on this profile, but for not having any sort of pay 1 clock yourself, gain some sort of advantage card, there is another one in this set that we did not put on the list that looks at top 3 and adds a character. But you do have cards in this set like the Yuna that can top check. Granted, you'll then add to hand and then discard. But the Leafa that we showed that looks at top 2, if you see 2 characters, you know you can play this in +2. Or if you look and like the characters are just not anything you want, you could just leave them there for clean triggers as well. So I mean, there are play patterns with other cards in this set that do add a little bit more value to this type of card. I'm not a huge fan, but I can see the advantage in a set where you don't have any sort of Ricky type effect, where you may want to play this type of profile. Another Kirito here on our list. I really like this card. It's on play if you have 2 or more anniversary characters, you draw and then discard. And then the second effect is pay 1, discard a climax to salvage a climax. Just try to get consistency in your combos is always really good. So if you're playing choice pants, you have a choice climax in your hand, you play this down and swap it out, and then also get a little extra hand fix with the draw discard. So having more utility is never bad, and consistency also my favorite.
Yeah, this card has a lot of utility, especially in terms of getting the correct climax in your hand. You do have ways to look at the top of your deck, like with the Yuna level 0 and then the level 0 bomb that looks at the top 2 and rearranges them. So if you need to use the draw ability to put a climax in your hand at all, you've got it. And then if you have the climax you need in your waiting room, any climax on top could be the one you need. He's just really good at making your climax combos consistent at every point in the game. And also a double discard outlet, which is not to be ignored, especially in 8 pants where every climax you trigger can add another one to your hand. So we're switching to level 1s that we found interesting. This Asuna here gets 500 for each of your other characters at base 4k, so she's a 106k. Not bad stats for a secondary attacker. And when she attacks, if you have 2 or more other anniversary characters, you rearrange, or you look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one on top and bin the other one to the waiting room. So she lets you control your trigger by choosing which cards from the top 2 that you would rather trigger.
So I really like this card. Victor wasn't too sold on it, but the fact that the 500 power is cross turn and not the typical yellow just on your turn was really cool to me. But even more than that, the types of decks that I've theorized with SAO 10th, being able to look at the top 2 cards and being able to choose my trigger seemed really powerful. The first deck I tested was a choice. Being able to look at the top 2 and put a choice trigger on top while milling the other card, which potentially had a soul trigger for me to either stock or add to my hand, was pretty good. It also synergizes with other tech for the 8 pants build, and can also help just triggered like doors a lot easier because you're digging 1 card deeper. So I think that within the scope of this set, this profile does provide some utility, and if you have some slots at level 1 that you can fit it in, it's probably a good choice. We have our first level 1 climax combo, Kirito and Alice. If the sum of levels in your level zone is 2 or higher, It gains 2k power, so it'll be a 6k base. A lot of this set deals with experience, so you want to be a little top heavy with your level 3s. You're probably going to level a level 3 yellow if you're playing the choice builds here. So that way you can start to build towards 6 experience, which a number of level 3s require. With the climax combo, this could be a little confusing. When it was spoiled, I definitely had it a little backwards. But when the card attacks, if the choice trigger that's shown, the choice climax is shown in the climax area, you look at the top card of your deck. If it's an anniversary character, show it to your opponent, put it in your hand, and then put the remaining cards in the waiting room. And then you may pay the cost of 1 stock. If so, during this card's attack, you perform the trigger check twice. I'm sorry.
So as a card, it'll look at the top. It'll take that off and add it to your hand if it's a anniversary character, so you can get some card advantage out of it. It's not very selective, but then you also get the double trigger, and if you're playing this, you've got climaxes in your deck that can add characters to your hand. With the choice climax, you've got a lot of increased chances of triggering it, especially if you took an anniversary character off the top, and you're also triggering twice. So.
Yeah, and that's really what makes the card shine, to be honest, is the double trigger, and then just being able to add like your 1/1 counters. That'll then make your 6k base card 8k, which may help them survive an additional turn to hopefully combo off again. So this card was really fun to play with. It wasn't my first choice, but it was like the first one I ran just because the 8 choice build seemed pretty cool. But yeah, it's not a bad combo, as I think most of these level 1s are pretty good.
We've got a backup here, 1/1 2k backup. And this is actually just a Leafa counter. When you use the backup, you reveal the top of your library. If it's anniversary, put it in your hand and discard a card. So with your Yuna in the back row, you'll do this twice. It is pretty good at increasing the odds of you canceling the next attack, and because they've sort of power crept 1/1 backups to be 25s, this gets to be a 2k counter and still be a Leafa counter at level 1.
I think as a Leafa counter, it's not bad. The reason why it made this list was the Yuna back row. Being able just to look at 2 just by playing this card is really stupid at 1, in my opinion, when you're still like in first stack and you're trying to mill so that way you can create that better ratio of compression. Dig 2 real quick and then hopefully get a cancel. Very good. It's not my favorite 1/1 counter. I like the blue one a little better, more or less, for color fixing. But the play with that Yuna back row cannot be denied. Next one we have here is a Kirito and Asuna. It's on play. You can pay 1, discard an anniversary character. If you do, you can choose one of your opponent's characters, return it to their hand, and it becomes a 6k for the turn. This is very good in the current meta we're in. You're probably going to play this at 3. Play this down, bounce a Futaba, you're going to bounce a Rider, or you're going to bounce a Neg Soul Priestess. And this card did a lot for you, I think.
Yeah, main phase bounce is really strong. It's really strong with standby decks running around. It's really strong with bodyguards running around. Fate does have the you can't front attack Rider. That this is really good to bounce. This has got a lot of good targets right now, and I can't imagine not teching at least 1 if you're going to put some amount of yellow in your deck.
Next we have a sort of new profile that they've been printing the last couple of sets. It's a 1/1 anti-change bomb. This one is a clock bomb for cards higher than the opponent's level. I think they started printing these in Love Live's 6th anniversary.
If you want to be technical, P4.
Okay, I forgot. I forgot about that one. Have they printed anything between P4 and that, though?
No.
Yeah, so the original profile wasn't P4. I always forget that card exists. Wow. And then I think Love Live 6th anniversary, they printed a Honoka, which just sent it to waiting room, which is like fine. But being able to send something to clock is probably one of the more powerful removal that you can play. Like stock is fine, they just pay it out. But if you send it to clock, very few decks can then access their clock and get that card back.
Yeah, being able to kill early plays when you're still level 1 is really strong when people are playing a lot of standbys, and then if they're playing a lot of early play heals or early play level 3s instead, it'll do the job just the same as a 2-1 would. So having the opportunity to play at an entire level earlier is nothing but upside on this card archetype. Next we've got a Kirito and some characters I've never seen before. Once per turn, when you use an S ability, this gains, on reverse, blind stock the top of your deck. This is really good in the context of this set. You want to be using S abilities every turn because you have your Yuna back row. This is great to back up. He backs up to 7k. If he reverses on opponent's turn, he can make blind stock on both turns. So it's just really good with the sort of S ability theme that the green cards seem to have in the set.
Yeah, the set build is why we included this card. Typically, I'm not a huge fan of blind stalking, but in certain decks, I find that it is more value, and this one tends to lend itself. You're using 1/1 counters, and this will then just kind of on top of the 1/1 blue counter, which refreshes itself. This one will then add another stock. I also think that a lot of these decks work towards a lot of stock generation. So this just helps with that sort of game plan if that's the road you want to take as well.
You also have a lot of endgame that lets you pay out that stock and take advantage of it to end the game faster. There are definitely a couple deck profiles I can see that want to start level 3 with 6 stock, and it doesn't seem impossible to reach 10 stock for some of these effects, where you'd be able to get like a triple finisher combo off on somebody.
This is another level 1 combo. It's a Silica and Kirito. If all of your characters are anniversary, it gains 2k. So it's a 6k base if you're playing all anniversary characters. It climax combos with a door. When the battle opponent of this becomes reversed, if Mordaban is in the climax zone, you choose one of your level 0 or lower cards in the waiting room. You put it in your stock. You reveal the top card of your library. If it's level 1 or higher, you then add it to hand.
We've seen this profile before a few times, most notably Konosuba, Bunny Girl, Yun. It's also the standby combo for Cardcaptor Sakura Japanese version, except for the fact that those ones take stock from the top of your deck. This one chooses level 0s from your waiting room. So it gives you cleaner stock at the cost of not milling you the extra 1 that a blind stock would. But I think that that's worth the trade-off, just so you know exactly what's in your stock.
There's an interesting line of play you could do with this. If you play the Yuki 3-2 gold bar combo, which you mill 11, and if you hit 11 characters, you do some crazy stuff. You can stock climaxes with this combo. So get the climaxes out of your deck, and there you go.
That's a bit extreme, but we'll go with it. For the most part, you're going to be using this mostly at as a stock charge that also gets you extra cards. Of note as well, because it doesn't blind stock, when you look at the top 2 to rearrange them, you can set it up so that you know that at least the first one will hit if you see a level 1 or higher card, whereas a Bunny Girl Union wouldn't do that because she would blind stock the second card. Another level 1 combo, because we seem to have so many of them. This is for our Gate/Pants deck. 1045, if you have 2 or more other anniversary characters, gets 1k power. So we're looking at a 55, 65 with Climax in play. It's Climax combo with experience. When this attacks, if the Pants is in your Climax zone and you have 2 or higher in your level zone, you mill 3 and you choose up to 1 level X or lower anniversary character, salvage it, And for the turn, this character gets 500 power. X equals the number of anniversary characters put in the waiting room this way. So no matter what, even if you're the unluckiest person in the world and you mill 3 climaxes, you'll still be able to grab a level 0 with this guy. He'll always give you a card. What this guy does compared to the other climax combos we've seen so far is give you selective card advantage, where you have access to your whole waiting room, assuming you hit the right level needed to be able to salvage that level. The other ones look at the top sort of randomly and you don't get a lot of choice, but this one gives you the most choice over what you're grabbing when you're performing your level 1 combo.
This was my initial thought as the best level 1 climax combo. I haven't tested it yet just because I immediately thought it was the best one. I wanted to try the other decks before I settled into it. As Victor said, it gives you selectivity, at least to some regard, which I think is what's really good. It also is uninteractive. So whereas the choice combo is like, also uninteractive, it doesn't have the selectivity. And all of them are 6k, so they're all 7k because they're all 1k ones when you attack with the climax. So they're all about the same power, but I still think that this is probably the most good combo you can play at one, although the more DeBarn combo has been really good at building up a lot of stock because the end game does require a bit much. However, the hand size is hurt a lot with that build. Next one we have is a Kirito and Sinon. When this card attacks, if I have another anniversary character, it gains 3k, making it a 7k base. It also has a profile that I think we first saw in Batman Ninja, where it has a startup of discarding a climax to gain another 1k, and the ability, when the battle opponent becomes reversed, you can draw a card.
So this is a profile that's existed all the way since, I want to say, Little Buster's Ecstasy with Saya. It was a staple in Girlfriend Beta Mono Blue as well. And Madoka Rebellion had this on a 1/1. But just having so much power loaded onto it for the turn you play her, they're already a 7k, and then each climax gives an additional 1k. It's really great for, again, the Pants deck or a Gold Bar deck, where you end up with a lot of climaxes in your hand, you want a way to ditch them, and you want to turn them into other cards. It's a really strong discard outlet, and replaces the climaxes with random cards from the top of your deck.
I didn't realize the profile was that old. I don't think anybody ever mentioned that when they were going over the Batman Ninja stuff. Because, yeah, the profile's not bad. Next one is a Kirito and someone I don't know who they are. It's a 1/1 backup. When you use this backup, if all the characters are anniversary, you can blind stock, and it's 2k. This is the blue backup that I was talking about as being my 1/1 choice of play. Just because when I thought about these decks, I considered them sort of compression stock building decks. And although this is a 1/1, it just kind of replenishes itself. So that was possibly why I leaned more towards it than the Leafa 1/1 counter. But both are great options. This is just my preference, and also for blue fixing for the non-blue specific decks.
Yeah, this is a good card in the set. There's no 1/0 2k counter in the set for anniversary trait specifically. You could still splash Vice Commander Asuna for the 1k 1k split, but if you want to stick only anniversary, this is your go-to. It also has a soul trigger. If you're playing the choice deck, you'll be able to salvage it with your choice trigger, whereas a 1/0 2k counter you wouldn't be able to salvage. So it's a good choice in the context of the deck. The soul trigger matters a lot, and it's also a free counter, counting the blind stock. So moving on to level 2s, we have Asuna. She's a 2k to level 3 or higher in front. This is really good in the set. You have a choice of early plays. All of them are pretty good, and they're in 3 different colors. So the 2k assist will matter. Experience. If your experience is 3 or higher, she gains rest this. Choose one of your anniversary characters, and for the turn it gains during this card's battle, your opponent can't play events. Anti-event is good against specific events, rest counters, like Kimono Friends, the Fujimi minus Soul counter, a couple others.
I really like this card. Victor mentioned that there are a lot of early plays, and they're all pretty good, and this just makes them big enough that the opponent becomes a little more unlikely to answer them. The anti-event is really good, especially with the 1/0 main phase bounce. You play that, you bounce a card, you give another thing, can't play events, and then um, the like rest counters. If there are events, won't be able to rest you. You're still susceptible at that point, though, to a money counter in the last lane. However, this kind of card just makes it so that 2 lanes are now more likely to stick some damage on the opponent instead of having to worry if they're going to money counter you in 2 different lanes. The next one is a Kirito and Asuna. This is another really cool card. On play, you can pay 1, discard an anniversary. If you do, you get to free fresh and then choose one of your characters and give it 1k power. It's also a stock bomb for opponents' characters who are higher than their level. So this serves not only as an anti-change option, it also can be used in situations where you find yourself out a lot of climaxes, and you can now fix your deck state. So 2 very good serviceable options.
Yeah, level 2 printed characters aren't seeing a lot of play right now just because early plays are so strong. But when you get these 2/1 utility characters with 2 really strong, relevant abilities, you're going to want to make room for at least one. And I think that this guy, it fits the bill. Just having that panic button that you can hit to refresh your deck whenever you need to, while also still having utility. I could see having huge swing turns where you fix your broken deck by refreshing, and then also deal with a really important early play that your opponent might have in play. So this card's got a very high ceiling.
Very good card.
Next, we've got a level assist. Whenever you trigger a pants icon, you can draw a card and discard a card. And then it also has, as an S ability, pay 1, discard a climax, salvage a character. So going with the theme that most of these blue cards seem to have, super good discard outlet, really strong utility. You'll almost never be flooded with climaxes in hand if you're playing a pants deck that has all the support that it does for being able to discard climaxes.
Agreed. In the 8 pants deck, I think you definitely play this as your level assist over the Asuna. If you're playing like a pants choice deck, I think you still play the Asuna assist for that anti-event. But 8 pants, I think this is definitely your choice for when you early play. The blue early play is also really disgusting, and this just makes it even like better, in my opinion.
Now moving on to one of our first level 3s now. We've got Kirito and Asuna. Experience 6 plus 1500 power for 11k base. On play, it is a heal as well. It has a climax combo that requires experience 6. So when it attacks, you pay 2, discard a card if the choice climax is in your climax zone. You put the top 5 cards of your library in the waiting room. You perform the following action X times. Deal 2 to your opponent, and this gains 2500 power. And X is the number of climaxes moved to the waiting room in this way. So this has a chance to do a lot of burn damage. You hit 2 climaxes, that's 2 damage, and then she gets to attack 17k. So it's very strong. It has a very Coco Achino Rabbit House finisher feel to it. A little more RNG with the mill 5, but definitely worth the reward for the burn 2 instead of burn 1.
This card really provides a big payoff if you're good at knowing where things are in your deck. Like I said, I viewed these decks as being very high stock generation when I designed the various deck ideas I had. And then once you know, get a huge amount of stock and you know where your climaxes are, you can sort of figure out when or if you're going to attack with this in your attack order. So that way you can try to either maximize the amount of burns or shoot for a little more mitigated one. The fact that it doesn't stack the damage and it's different instances of two, you're almost always going to want to try to get it off where you can get the most amount of twos, because two, sometimes three is like literally the best sort of damage you can deal at three, because you're going to assume that your opponent has a deck where they've been able to mitigate their compression to cancel as much as possible. So you want to deal those twos or threes to try to get as much to stick and then hopefully kill them.
Yeah, this card also plays really well with your level 0 utility. Using your Yuna to clear non-climaxes from the top to dig one extra functionally. Works sort of the same way as adding one to your Brainstorm. Looking at the top two to know if you need to attack with something else first with your level 0 bomb. Like, all your level 0 utility comes into play to really enhance your level 3 game as well. So your early drop cards are not dead cards in the late game as well.
It's fairly easy to get about two of these off as well. I haven't gotten three off, but if you go into your final turn with
10 stock.
6, is it 10 to do three or
It's
two?
10 to do 3.
It's 10 to do three, but you can easily do 2 with 6, right?
Yep.
If I did that math right. So I mean, 6 stock with these decks is pretty easy to generate. You could even go into your last turn with 2 stock, play this down, attack with 2 weenie characters, and you generate the 2 stock to on attack and do this. So even one of these is pretty powerful. If your deck is in the right spot, you know, you swing in for 3 with this, and if you got 2 climaxes in those 5 cards, you're swinging in for 7, which can kill someone from 3-0.
Yeah, it's when it works out, it's basically a Coco Uchino on steroids. And the 2 damage, there's not a lot of cards that mitigate damages in instances of 2. There are a lot that mitigate damage in instances of 1. So it's very well positioned right now.
Next one we have is an early play Asuna. If there are 2 or fewer climaxes, it can come into play at 2. If the sum of the levels and level zone is 6 or higher, it gains 1,500, making it an 11k. And then it's an on-play top check. If you're playing the choice combo, you have no way to cantrip to try to get your climax if you didn't already have it in hand. So this is one way to be able to do that, by digging 5 cards. This is where I was saying that if you're playing the Asuna back row, where your early plays can become pretty large and your opponent then may have to deal with something they can't. So this will be 13k with that 2k assist in the back. And yeah, I mean, it's a pretty standard utility thing, but being as big as it is and continuously even on the opponent's turn, it does add a little bit more to it than just being a standard top check axe.
It's a pretty good early play. It has a effect that gives it immediate impact on the board, so even if they find a way to remove it, you still got your extra card out of it. 11k by itself is pretty strong. They're going to have to use one of those 2-1 anti-change bombs to even think about touching this. Trying to attack it with something that gets power is just asking to be hit with one of the great backups the set has access to, so it puts a lot of pressure on and gets value right away. I do like the balance of having your finisher heal and your early play dig. As long as you have one of those effects on each of them, it's a pretty good balance of being able to find the climaxes you need to do the finishing blow and also finding the climax you need, and also healing in the meantime too, in case it doesn't work out.
True.
We've got here Kirito and Alice. On play, you search for an anniversary character, and this has, when this attacks, pay 3 stock. If so, you mill your opponent's bottom 4 and deal X, where X is the number of climaxes. So this is a potentially alternate finisher. It's got that icy tail effect without a climax, and you could even use it as, say, copy number 5 of any of your level 3s you're playing 4 of. It's another card that you can play yeah, especially as an experienced deck, it doesn't feel nearly as bad leveling this up to become yellow and also trying to get that 6 experience at level 2 that the deck needs.
Yeah, I included this for a lot of reasons. Experience is one reason. Second reason, it allows me to search for my finisher, and then it does have that secondary finisher effect. Icy Tail's never been my favorite kind of thing, but not tied to a climax. And on a card that already helps me gather my finisher, it seemed really good to me. I don't think I've actually been able to use this in a game yet because it ends up in my level zone more often than not instead of like my finisher. But this is definitely a very good option for you at level 3 if you're looking for like a secondary finisher or just some extra utility to find your ending pieces. We have another level 3 climax combo, Kirito and Lifa. This one cantrips on play. Look at draw 2 and then discard. When you use an act ability, it gains X power. X equals the number of opponents' back row characters by 1,000. So if they have a full back row, it'll gain 2k to be 11.5. It has a climax combo. When you reverse the battle opponent, you can pay 2 and then discard a card. If the gold bar is in climax zone, you clock kick and then burn 1 and then choose one of your characters and it gains 1k for the turn. My issue with this is it requires a lot. It has a pretty heavy cost, in my opinion. You have to reverse, and then it's relatively small. It's only 12.5 on attack. I'd like to be about 13k if I'm working with the reverse combo, just because if my opponent has, let's say 10.5 base with whatever back row, I guess we'll say 11.5. If they put a 2.5 back up, they're going to be 14k. So I like to minimally be about 13k if I have to reverse, but this is only 12.5. So I mean, even if we look at 14k as like a threshold to make sure that we can't be countered over, it doesn't even come close to that. With the 2k assist in the back row, 13.5.
So the thing I like about this card compared to other finishers is how guaranteed it is. I think that with the 2k assist, the Asuna, you definitely have enough power to get over most of what you need to get over. And the climax combo does guarantee damage with that clock shoot, so compared to others like the choice combo, you can whiff on the mill 5. It's all instances of damage that are able to be cancelled. But this one, if your opponent's hyper compressed, will probably be your best bet. The clock shoot and then burning for a smaller amount. Obviously comes at the drawback of getting hit by things like GGO and Kimono Friends that stop burns for 1. But if you're looking to guarantee damage and you really like clock shooting, this is a fine go-to. And having a gold bar in your deck isn't bad with so many discard outlets for climaxes in this set.
Something I hadn't thought about is if you did a gold bar pants build, so I guess 7 builds to test for this.
Speaking of gold bars, we got a level 3 Yuki here. This one heals on play, 10k power, climax combo with a gold bar. You pay 1, discard 2. When she attacks, you pay cost. If you have another anniversary character in play, you put the top 11 cards of your library in your waiting room. If you hit 4 characters, you deal 1 damage. If you hit 8 characters, you heal 2. And if you hit 11 or more characters, you deal 2, then you deal 2, then you deal 4. Something to note about this card is that if you hit 11, you get all 3 effects. You don't just get the final effect. Hitting 11's a bit unrealistic, so you have to look at this as a pay 1, discard 2 that will burn 1 and heal you for 2. So if you're playing against a lot of people in your metagame that don't have a lot of burst damage and sustaining yourself down to 3-0 is good enough to survive you for another turn, this is a good combo to chip away at them, mill yourself out, maybe get yourself into a really good compression state, and also heal down to 3-0.
I know you think I'm memeing, but I really think that the 1-0 more Devon combo, you just put all your doors in your stock, and then you immediately get hit to 3, and then do this. I mean, what's that? 2, 4, 8, 9. So if you get double of these, just kill your opponent easy.
Another thing about this finisher compared to others is that you don't need that much stock to do multiples of it, whereas most of the finishers will require something like 6 stock for a double. This one requires 0 stock going into your attack step for a double. It's more gated on cards in hand than it is on stock, which is fine in my opinion for a set like this where you have so many incentives to play pants, gold bars, things like that.
Yep, not a bad card. It's very interesting. Time to meme. Let's go. We have another early play. This one is the red early play. If you have 2 or fewer climaxes, it comes out of 2. It heals, and we use a startup. It gains 2k, making it 11k for the turn that you've used the startup. Good synergy with all your backups to make it 13k. Good synergy on your turn because you're going to be using startups because that's how the deck is kind of engineered. And heals. Early play heals are pretty good. It's also level 3, so that helps you with your experience.
Yeah, this is probably the best card in the set to help you get the red fixing you need if you want to play the red door combo.
Yeah, unfortunately, red was a little lacking. As I'm sure you can tell, we put like 2 red cards up until we had these 2 level 3s, the level 1 combo, and then that one, and then this one.
Yeah, so this one here, when you play them from your hand, you reveal the top of your library. If it's an anniversary character, you burn one. Once per turn when you use a startup ability, it gains 500 power times your other anniversary characters. And it has discard a card, give an anniversary character 2500. All on a 10k base power. So this is probably the weakest level 3 that we're going to feature today. It's not very impressive on paper, but I think the 3 abilities put together are pretty good. She's a 12k when you use a startup ability, and just to add in extra discard outlets for climaxes, there's no restriction on what you can discard to get extra power, so you can get really good refreshes and the extra burn. This is a card I would consider playing maybe 1 or 2 of if you're trying to run the level 1 combo. A red level 3 really is the ideal level 1 level up card if you're running the door combo.
I agree with everything Victor has said. I'm playing 4 of the early play. I'm actually not just because I'm on choice, which has a different sort of second way to play level 3. But this, just to get the burn one, it does get pretty big, and then it does have that extra startup utility. So if you are playing like the gold bar, like a gold bar door builds, you could discard to pump your on reverse finisher to just guarantee that clock kick. So it's not a card that you should overlook. Is it the best card? No, but it does have a line of play that you could think about playing. This is probably the best early play in the set. Kirito and Uegio. If you have 4 more anniversary characters, gets -1 level. Super easy condition to meet. If you have experience 6, it gains an additional 500 power and the following ability. When this attacks, you choose one of your anniversary characters and it gains 1500. So 9/5 on just by itself. Then you can give the 1500 to itself or something else. It also is a heal to stock by discarding on play. So in a deck where you're just generating a whole bunch of stock, you have a 3/1 healer that can pump some other cards. So very good utility. I think that this is the best early play based on how it comes into play and everything that it does.
It has the easiest early condition by far of any early play condition you can get right now. It's harder to play in multiples, but the heal to stock is also very valuable here. It's good against anti-heals. It's good to help you maintain the stock you need to get double or triple finisher off while still having a presence at level 2. It just does a lot. You can put him in your level zone for experience. It does everything you'd want out of a non-climax combo level 3 in a Sword Art deck. Next card we have Sinon. When you play her, she digs the top 3, and you get to add any card you want. She's a climax combo. When you play the climax, if you have experience 6, she gets 3,000 power and the following ability. Pay 2, discard 2. Once per turn at the end of this card's attack, you can pay cost, if so stand. So she's a restander. The important thing to note about restanders like this is that the restand timing is at the end of her attack, which means that if she's direct attacking, she gets to restand. If she's reversed in battle, she gets to restand. The only thing that can stop her from restanding is like a memory kick.
The not having to reverse to gain the restand, cantripping, and just overall being really, really big, at least 14k, makes this like a really viable option. I'm not a big fan of restanders. In fact, I didn't have this card originally on like my list of cards that I thought were good to include in the video. But because of the 8 pants build and what you can do with that, in addition to not having to reverse, we definitely think that it's a line of play that you could think about, particularly within that 8 pants build. It's just a matter of being able to pay 2 and then have 2 cards to discard. That's like possibly the hardest part about this thing.
The thing I like about this as a finisher is that she has discard 2 cards as a cost, but she replaces herself in hand. Another thing to note about the stock cost is because your Sinon is attacking twice, it doesn't take as much stock to do a triple for this. I want to say it takes 7 or 8 instead of 10. And the dig for 3 cards on play will definitely help make it more consistent to be able to do a triple on this, if that's what you're going for.
You have to have, what, 7 cards in hand, though, to do triple? If you don't trigger pants, let's say.
I mean, you have an 8 pants deck, ideally. She cantrips on play. You need 6 cards in hand after you play the climax to do triple. It shouldn't be that hard. I guess especially in 8 pants where you're like guaranteed a card off your level 1 combo.
And particularly where you can just keep sculpting with the pants as well with your back row. Yeah, interesting. Hey, we'll have to see how that one plays. This is the last card that we have featured for this. Kirito Adventuring Altogether. When this is placed from hand to stage, you may pay the cost of 1 stock. If you do, you stock wash your opponent. And then when this attacks, it gains 1,000 per other anniversary characters. This is just a option to play over the Yui. Because we're probably going all anniversary in the deck. You're not going to play the Yui from the other Sword Art decks. I mean, surely you can definitely add that into this build. But, depending on the combo you're playing, you may end up whiffing at some point or other just because it is in the deck.
It's a very clean and efficient stock swap card. The only issue one might have with this card is that it's only available on a level 3 character. Oftentimes, the timing for this card is right before your opponent hits level 3 and they're about to spend all their stock. So they're holding like 6 to 8 stock. It's good if you hit level 3 first, but if they hit level 3 first, they're probably spending their stock down, healing to 3-0, and attempting their finisher. So being glued to a level 3 does hurt the timing a little bit, but there'll definitely be times where, like, when you hit level 3 first, this will be a very strong play.
Yep. So, with that concludes what we think are possibly the cards you want to be looking at for SAO 10th anniversary. This has been pretty fun. Victor, you've played against it. Your thoughts just on some of the cards you've seen and how they play as like a deck with like one brainstorm?
I really like the discard abilities that this deck has. There are so many different ways to make sure you refresh with as many climaxes as possible, and so many different ways to make sure you have the right climax in your hand. Uh, if you refresh with less than 6, you're probably really unlucky, just the way you can build your deck. And another thing that's really nice about the set overall is that one, it's a standalone set. So if you weren't into Sword Art, if you were really into Sword Art and new to Weiss, this is a really strong pickup because all the cards work with each other. You don't need to reach out for any old obscure cards that are hard to get, and you have a lot of choice on which combos you play. Uh, all of them have their merits and justifications, so you could even go so far as to say, hey, I really like Xenon, so I want to play the Xenon finisher, and nobody would fault you for that because it's still a strong finisher.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this set, as like just an overall, is like really, really good. Very well set design. I think all Sword Art sets have been pretty well designed, and maybe not Alicization, but yeah, I think that if you're into Sword Art, don't have any of the old Sword Art cards, go ahead and pick this up because it's definitely a pretty good deck, and I think it may end up being pretty powerful. I do need to do a lot more testing with the various builds just to try to figure out which one I like the most. The people I've been talking to on Japanese Twitter have been on Door Gold Bar, but they've been having the same issues I've had, which is hand size. So there's no definitive like best build yet. Um, I still think Pants Choice may be it, but half the fun of card games is trying to figure out the best build and how to continuously top. So that'll be a fun journey while we work on that. You know, anything you'd like to add, Victor?
Nothing that hasn't been said yet. I think this is a great set, a good addition to the game, and just a really fun set to build around with. Having a lot of viable choices makes the deck building experience that much more fun because the deck doesn't just build itself. You don't just find like the 8 best double Rs, put them in a pile, and call it a day. There's a lot of choices here. Really strong power level, even going all the way down to uncommon. So I'm really happy to have looked over it and seen what it's capable of.
I agree. We want to thank everyone who listened. Hopefully, we were able to take the feedback from the previous video and turn that into a video that hopefully hit some of those points. We do want to continue to get feedback from people, so hit us up either on Facebook, here on YouTube. There should be like the Discord in the description. Likes, comments, subscriptions. We love those. We're still trying to grow here as a community and provide this content on a frequent basis, which hopefully I'll stop globetrotting to like Japan and all that, and we'll be more consistent. But yeah, other than that, we're all good. Thank
Yep.
you all again, and
If
have a
you
good
made it
night,
this
guys.
far, thanks for watching the video.